Okay. Welcome everyone to another session, which is hosted by Sitecore User Group Kerala. Here we are having Andrew, who is working as a consultant at Sitecore, and he would be walking us through how workflows work. And this session would be for every XP, XM, and even Sitecore AI. So yeah, handing over to you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Sri. So yeah, welcome. My presentation is called Workflows That Work. And like Sri mentioned, this can apply to any Sitecore implementation. Workflow is one of those topics that, for the most part, has not changed a whole lot since XP and Sitecore AI, which is beneficial because this is useful no matter which platform you're on. If and when you decide to upgrade, you don't need to make a lot of changes as far as workflow goes. So my presentation here, my goal is to answer a number of questions today. So I'll first just start by talking about just what is a workflow exactly. Then I'll talk about the benefits and potential pitfalls. If you're not sure whether or you have a workflow or not, I'll show you how you can find out, and then how you can get started. And finally, I'll show you how you can take your workflows to the next level with some advanced actions. With that, let's see. And by the way, if there are any questions, you can feel free to post any questions in the chat, or if you have them, just save them and write them down. There will be some time for Q&A at the end, and then I can answer those. But let's see. I will probably just be going through the presentation for the most part with and then taking a look at chat near the end. So. Let's see. So yeah, again, want to start with just what is a workflow. The simple answer, the dictionary definition is that a workflow is the sequence of processes that work passes through from initiation to completion. And that's honestly a pretty good definition for Sitecore as well. In Sitecore terms, we say a workflow is a series of predefined states that a piece of content must pass through before it can be published. So every state represents a step in the workflow process. So draft, review, or approved. We have commands that move content between these states. And then we also have actions that can trigger API calls or webhooks when those changes occur. So actions can be applied either directly to workflow states. So in this example, we have a command like auto publish. You can we have an action called auto publish that will automatically publish an item when it reaches this final workflow state, which is published. And then you can also assign actions to your commands. So if I put an action on approve or reject, that action would fire off when that state is fired off. In Sitecore, workflow states and commands and actions, these are all defined as items, which are located under the settings node in the content tree. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits. So the short answer to the benefits is that workflows will prevent unwanted publication and ensure that all of your content receives proper approval before going live. So without workflow, your content is publishable from the moment it's created. So if I create a blog post and 10 seconds later Shri goes and publishes the entire blog, my newly created blog post that still probably contains default content is going to be published. Sort of like we see in the screenshot here. Presumably this newspaper was not printed with Sitecore. But beyond preventing accidents, workflow ensures that if content needs to be validated by a QA or a legal department or any number of different audiences, that content cannot go live until it has received proper approval. So workflows add a layer of protection and accountability that keeps your content teams aligned and confident in what's being published. This is especially important as more and more content is being written and created with AI. We need that human oversight on that content, or you can run into some pretty weird situations there. Um, another benefit of workflow is that they can be as simple or as complex as you want them to be. So the simplest possible workflow consists of two states, one initial and one final, and then a single command to approve them all. Um, this I have a link to a serialization package that you can import this two-state workflow if you want to. That'll be posted a little bit later. But also workflows can be very complex, requiring sign-off from multiple departments. And then there's no limit to the number of workflows you can create, the number of workflow states that you can put in a single workflow. And again, you can have multiple different workflows and assign them to different types of items. So you can have different types of workflows for different types of content. Maybe your product items or your product pages need to go through a different workflow or get different levels of approval than testimonials, for example. Those two items can go through different workflows. And then with the granular permissions of Sitecore, you can customize workflows to the specific user types. So for example, maybe associate editors need to go through more steps than a senior editor. Maybe a senior editor can skip a QA for a step or two. And as mentioned earlier, workflows operate largely the same on both XP and Sitecore AI, and I need to update this slide with the new logo. Largely the same on both XP and Sitecore AI. And my absolute favorite part is that workflows facilitate automatic versioning, which makes it easier to store a history of changes and edits. The way it works is when someone makes a change to a page that has been approved via a workflow, Sitecore automatically creates a new version of that page. And then that page needs to go through the same approval process before it's going to overwrite the currently approved version. So shout out to Fish Tank Consulting on this image, by the way. I pulled this from a Fish Tank blog from 2024, as I often do whenever I'm looking for stuff Sitecore related. Those Fish Tank blogs have a lot of info. So now let's talk about some of the downsides of workflow. So we talked about the benefits, and there are some downsides. And so the first is just slowing down the publication. So while workflow is incredibly helpful in preventing errors, workflows certainly will not help you launch your site faster. It's quite the opposite. In fact, workflows intentionally slow you down for the purposes of making sure that content updates are accurate. So if you are launching a new website and you need to move fast, this is a very easy task to move into phase two. So you say, we'll get to this when the website is done. Folks will think, only to discover that you're never actually done with the website. And then once that decision is made to skip workflows, it's very easy to keep putting off. It's rarely an urgent need, and especially if your business users learn to use Sitecore in a workflow-free environment, they may not even know that it is an option. So, another downside is that someone needs to understand security, not necessarily you, not necessarily even the person designing the workflow, but at some point, someone is going to need to assign those permissions. So in the language of the security editor, you need to understand how to set workflow state delete, workflow state write, and workflow command execute. So I won't be going into detail on these, but in short, these permissions determine who can delete, edit, or execute commands in a given workflow state. So for example, while your item is awaiting approval, I should not be able to execute commands. I should not be able to execute my own, I should not be able to approve my own items if it's going to QA for approval. But maybe I should be able to reject my own items, for example. So if I notice an error right after I've submitted it, maybe I should be able to reject my own content so that QA doesn't waste their time proofreading an item that I already know has some typos. So um, let's see. So now at the risk of sending some mixed messages, I'm going to point out that my favorite feature of workflow, that automatic versioning, this can also be a downside if you're not careful. This is especially possible if you have a simple two-state workflow like the one I mentioned earlier and the one that I'm going to link to, where you can approve your own content. If you're frequently submitting changes and then noticing another small mistake or small error and then making an edit quickly, those those version numbers can get out of control pretty quickly. So you'll want folks to know how to delete those old unneeded versions or have a process in place to automate that. You definitely don't want your versions to get into the hundreds. Generally, Sitecore has traditionally recommended keeping your version numbers in the single digits, so less than 10 on any given item. And if you get to more than 10 versions, start deleting those. Again, you can automate that process to automatically delete older versions, or you can teach your authors how to, manually remove those older versions. And it's worth mentioning that workflow is less useful if everyone's an admin. So this is another one of those things that happens often at the beginning of an implementation and never gets changed after the fact sometimes. So folks will wanting to move quickly, folks will figure, for now, we'll just make everyone an admin so everyone can do all the things they need to do. So this is risky for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it gives everyone the ability to completely break the content on your website. But in the context of this presentation, it kind of defeats the purpose of workflow in a few different ways. For one, since admins bypass all security, there's no real enforcement of the workflow. So anyone can approve their own content. If I'm an admin, I can approve even when it's, being assigned to QA. I can execute those commands. So the oversight isn't exactly there. The other downside is there's no automatic versioning. So admins can edit items in a final state. So if you edit an approved item, it won't go through that automatic validation process. You'll just edit the item in its final state, and there'll be no version history. It'll just be publishable. And so the question of do you have a workflow? If you're not sure if you have a workflow or not, in Sitecore AI, when you make a new page, if you look at the page and you see this actions menu, and you'll see what state that item is, that means that you have a workflow in the page builder. So this is where you're going to be where you're going to be building pages. If you see publish instead, if you see the publish button, that means that you don't have a workflow. And so in Sitecore XP or Sitecore XM, if you're creating in either the content editor or the experience editor, you will get a little yellow message here. If you publish now, the selected version will not be visible on the website because it's not in the final workflow step. In the experience editor, I believe this notification is a blue banner. It might still be yellow. I can't remember exactly. It's been a while since I used the experience editor. But let's see. But yeah, if you don't see this message, that means again that your pages are not in a workflow and your content is not in a final state. Your content, excuse me, is basically just publishable from the moment it's created. So next we want to talk about how can we get started with workflow. So the simplest way to get started with workflow is to assign the basic workflow. This basic workflow gives you a starting point where you can approve or reject your own content. It includes a data source action, which we'll talk about later. It is out of the box, but someone would need to assign permissions to it. You can assign this to page templates in the standard values item from the review tab. So if you're on Sitecore AI and you don't have any workflows set up, usually assigning this to your default page template would be enough to apply it to everything on your site, since all of your pages are typically going to have that in their inheritance. It's worth mentioning, Sitecore doesn't recommend using this workflow. They say in the documentation on the Sitecore Accelerate, it actually says this should not be used as actual configuration, but as an example of a simple workflow. So I'm not going to necessarily disagree with that advice, but it is definitely better. It is definitely better to build your own workflow using this as an example. But I would also say that using this workflow directly is better than having no workflow at all, so long as you remember to set the permissions. But if you want to follow that guidance, alternatively, you could have a developer install my simple two-state workflow. So it is essentially the same workflow, but the benefit here is that I've already set up security. Everyone is granted permission at the root of the workflow, so no editing permission is needed. So just to show how this workflow looks, so let me open up my page builder and actually let me point out where this workflow is located. So this is at GitHub/Andrew View, two-state workflow, I believe is the URL. So yep, this is my two-state workflow, and it's got simple instructions to install. You just clone the repository and then push the items into your workflow. So I'll go ahead and post this in chat. Hopefully everyone can access that, but if you can't, again, there's that QR code on the slide. I'll be going back to that shortly. But just to show where this workflow lives, I am going to open up the content editor on this page. Looks like my session has expired, so I'll reload this. So this is Sitecore AI, of course. This is the page builder. If you are on XP, you would be in the experience editor, but the content editor is there for both of them, for the time being at least. So in the content editor, we have system, workflows. Here's my two-state workflow. And again, very simple workflow. These pages, they just start off in draft, and then you can approve, and then ready is a final workflow state here. So there is no real approval. It's just to kind of help you with your own content. And just to show you the difference there, so if I go and create a page, I've made a few, oops. Oh, did I not set my insert options? Excuse me. I'm going to go quickly set my insert options here. So in the templates panel, by the way, this is just if you haven't seen Sitecore AI, nice option. You can set your insert options from the page builder. So I'm just going to go ahead and on the default page, we want to be able to, let's see, edit my insert options. I want to be able to create, I've created 3 pages here, a data source, workflow, no workflow, and a simple workflow page. So I am, now that I've set up those insert options, if I go back to my editor on my home page, I should be able to create a page with no workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and here we go. We'll call this no workflow. And as you can see, when I create this, there is the publish window right off the bat. So I can go ahead and publish this. And again, if one of my coworkers was to publish this homepage and publish subpages, my page here with no content would also be published along with those. So if I instead create the simple workflow page, simple workflow. So now you'll notice instead of that publish button, I can see this is in a draft state, and I have this approve action. So again, I've got some steps so I can move that item through the workflow. And if you've never assigned workflow before, in SitecoreAI, when you create a new site, you automatically start off with a page template in your site collection. And so if you're not on Sitecore AI and you're using the Sitecore Experience Accelerator, you have something similar. But if you're on a non-SXA website, you just need to find your page templates. And then on standard values from the review tab, you click this initial button, and then you can assign an initial workflow. And it looks like I did assign the two-state workflow here to this page. Oh, that's on a different site collection. I'm using learning demos. So in my learning demos, the initial workflow on the page, it looks like two-state is selected, but well, it at least is not on the one with no workflow. So that is where we can go and assign those. And so let's see. Any questions at this point on the basics of workflow? All right, not hearing any questions, not seeing anything posted in chat. So if you do have those questions, feel free to let me know. But next, I want to talk a little bit about, so that's the default workflow here. Next, I want to talk a little bit about how we can take those workflows to the next level. So one very important action that was added back in version 10.0 and is part of the Sitecore Experience Accelerator is the data source workflow action. So this will approve your data sources when the page is approved, which is crucial when you are dealing with pages with multiple components. So just to highlight this, if I go to my simple workflow page, again, we can see that I've got under actions here, I can approve. Now, let's see, if I add some content here, if I add a page content component, I have some text. We'll just imagine that is a little bit more interesting. And then let's say I want to add also a rich text component. So rich text. And I have some rich text. So my content, I've got I've got two different fields here. I've got my content field and my text field. Now, if I look at this page, if I look at the page content, we can see these two fields are defined a little bit differently. So the content field is defined on the item itself. So in XP, I would call this data that's coming from the context item. So this field is defined on the context item. It's defined on the page item. So if I change this text here, I'm pulling that text from the field that's defined on the page itself. But you'll notice if I expand these fields, I do not see that rich text field. I don't see some rich text anywhere. Likewise, if I drag more rich text fields on here or image fields, so the item fields don't change. So this data is actually stored in a separate local data source that's automatically created when I drag and drop that page. And if we look at the architecture here, if I go back to the content editor, I can see here's my home page. Here's that simple workflow page. And now I have this data folder and I have two text items. Here's text one. It's just a simple item with some rich text and another with more rich text. So that's a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. By the way, if you notice in your own instances that you don't see this data folder, on the View tab, there is an option for hidden items. Uh, Again, knowing that architecture is, it's important for developers and maybe for admins, but most content authors don't necessarily know all of this architecture and shouldn't need to know. As a content author, a page builder, you don't really care about that background architecture. All you care about is the look and feel of your page. Like, how does this page look? Now, the issue is if these items are in workflow, if we want to restrict those items as well, you'll notice, and let me go ahead back in the content editor. Let me show you the workbox. This is a tool that isn't used as much in Sitecore AI, but it's certainly used a lot in XP. It is still there in Sitecore AI, but this shows us the um, this shows us items in our different workflows. And so if I look, I have my two-state workflow. I can see my simple workflow page is in draft, and I can go ahead and approve this. But I also have two items that are in this basic data source workflow. So my text one and text two items, they are also in workflow awaiting approval. And if I just use that simple workflow, uh, when I go ahead and approve, so now my page is approved and ready for publication, but if I publish this, this text is not going to appear. You can see that my text items are still in workflow. So this is a common issue is now, these data sources need to be approved. And again, you don't necessarily want your authors to need to know all this architecture. Even your proofreaders wouldn't necessarily need to know all this complex architecture. They just want to look at the page itself. So this is where the data source workflow action comes into play. So if I go back to my content editor, so under templates, project, or excuse me, under system, workflows, if you look at the basic workflow, this is an out-of-the-box workflow. It under the draft state and under approved, it has both a validation action. The validation action is going to check for things like alt text on imagery. The data source workflow action means that when you approve items in this basic workflow, it is also going to approve your workflow items. So let's see. First off, I'm going to go back to my workbox and just approve these text items. No selected items, approve all. So all of these workflows are clear. And then I'm going to create a new subpage with the data source workflow. And so once again, I'm going to drag and drop some rich text. Hello world. Let's do a column splitter with a few other rich text components. One here, one here, and more text, even more text here. So anyways, I've got some content. I've got this particular page. If I go back to my workbox and refresh, we'll see I've got one item in the basic workflow and 3 items in draft. So again, because I have that data source workflow action, when I go to approve this page, you'll notice that Sitecore automatically approves those data sources as well. So again, this means that your authors and your approvers, they don't need to understand, all of that stuff that's going on in the background. Nobody needs to manually proofread those data sources. But you do get the ability to, again, have that automatic versioning on your data sources to make sure those data sources do require some approval. But again, that approval comes from the page level instead. So this is a really helpful action. Looking at the content editor here, just want to talk a little bit about setting this up. So by default, the basic workflow works with the basic data source workflow. The basic data source workflow, you can assign this to data sources. And once again, it's just a 2-state. Your data sources are either in draft or they are approved. And then this data source workflow action is pointing to that particular state. So this command item field tells you what command to execute on your data source item. So again, when this is executed, it just approves those data sources. If you want your data sources to go through a more complex workflow rather than just 2-state, you can absolutely create your own custom actions. You need different actions for those different states. And again, just point the command item to the appropriate workflow action. If you're just going to use the basic data source workflow, I think the best place for that data source workflow action would be on the final approval step. So whichever is the final step prior to publication, you can put that action there so that when it gets approved, all of your data source items get approved as well. So that is the data source workflow action. Some other things that you can use are actions and webhooks. So actions and webhooks can be used to automate different background processes when a command is executed or when an item enters a given workflow state. These actions in XP will execute typically an API call. There are also a few out-of-the-box actions like auto-publish that will automatically publish your item. The validation action that I saw earlier, this will make sure that your items have alt text and other required fields. But these days, as headless and composable systems are the norm, the preferred way of executing these would be through webhooks. There are currently 2 types of webhooks related to workflow. The webhook submit action will hit an endpoint. Basically, it executes a webhook instead of an API call. The webhook submit action, very similar to the standard action, again, just hits the endpoint whenever this webhook is triggered. There's also a webhook validation action, which requires a response from the third party before it will be approved. So if I go back and look at my workflows, let's see, I've probably done this on my 2-state. Oh, no, I haven't. So I did put the data source workflow action there though. But I'll just keep I'll do this in my 2-state workflow. This was for a demo I created earlier, so I'm going to delete that data source workflow action, and I'm going to insert a webhook submit action. And I'm going to call this notify. So with webhooks, we are typically hitting an endpoint. So if this were a real webhook where I was, notifying, I might be hitting something on Zapier or on some other automation platform. For now, I'm just going to use webhook.site, which just lets us test our webhooks here. This gives us a unique URL, which I'll copy to clipboard and go ahead and paste in my webhook and check enabled. So one thing to note, you can serialize this as JSON or XML data. And now if I go and edit my item, by the way, I'm going to switch. Right now, I am working as an admin. So you will notice that since I'm an admin, on this particular page, even though it has been approved, if I go and make a change, if I drag a title component on here, you will notice, let's see, this has been modified. It does say reload to make the changes, but it did not automatically give me a new version. That's because, again, as an admin, we don't trigger that automatic version. So if you have folks that are responsible for content authoring, they typically should not be an admin. If you've got everyone as an admin, you want to think about security so that you can get that oversight with workflow and also use the permissions. Because again, everyone being an admin can be kind of dangerous. So I'm going to switch over to my authoring account. And I'm going to go ahead and open this app as my author. And I'm going to go into the page builder. So looking at this data source workflow page, you'll notice that as an author, if I make a change here, as soon as I make a change, Sitecore automatically creates that version 2. And now again, this version needs to be approved before it will overwrite that live content. So in XP, this would happen when you click right away when you click lock and edit the page. In SitecoreAI, it happens as soon as you make a change to that page. Now, what I want to do back in my admin account, let's see, actually, I've already assigned that workflow action. I'm just going to double check and make sure that I saved my changes. And so now when Andrew, the author, goes and makes his change, let's see, we just changed the title of the page and approves that content, changed the title. We can see that when that action executes, oh, yeah, I'm on the wrong page here. So let's do this on the simple workflow page. So some text, some more text, approve, changed the content field. Got to make sure I'm submitting the right workflow. And now if I look at that webhook, we can see that that webhook was executed, and this is the information that Sitecore is sending. So the name of the action, we can see the comments, change the content field, and then some other information about the item itself. So if I were setting up, again, that notification, I know that this is the type of data that I can put, and I can decide, how we're going to use that information on the notification email. So typically this is used if you want to let your QA team know that there are items awaiting approval. or if you want to let someone know that their content has been approved, you can set up those kinds of notifications with those secure webhooks using third-party systems. And let's see. So one more thing you can do if you need some really complex actions and you're a developer, you can use the Sitecore API or you can use GraphQL mutations to move items through workflow. So ultimately, your workflow state is defined by regular fields in the database. So we can modify that programmatically just like we can with any field. So in Sitecore XP, this would primarily be done through the API by putting that item into an editing state and then editing any field value. So in this case, the workflow state field, the underscore underscore, or the dunderscore, the dunder. By the way, just fun fact, I have been working with Sitecore for over 10 years, and I've been saying underscore underscore or double underscore, and I just yesterday learned the term dunder. The double underscore is referred to as a dunder. So if you work at all with standard fields or things like that and you see that, it's a little easier to say than double underscore. But so yeah, the workflow state field, you can modify that directly and then save your changes by putting by doing the end edit. Or if you are using if you're using Sitecore AI or if you're using a headless implementation, you have access to GraphQL mutations. So you basically in both ways we have in both methods in the DXP or in Sitecore AI, we can modify those items programmatically. I think one of the most useful ways to leverage this would be to put components or overlays on your staging server that would allow users to approve or reject something without needing to log into Sitecore. So usually if you've got a department like legal or honestly even QA, they probably don't need Sitecore credentials. They're not going to be doing a lot of actual Sitecore work other than, just proofreading content. So giving folks the ability to approve or reject content without requiring that login will be super helpful, especially if you're already near your limits as far as concurrent users go. So giving someone an account just to sign off on a piece of content probably is not the most efficient way to leverage those concurrent users. So I don't have a demo for this one, but I would say the most important thing to know if you're going to leverage this is understanding the names of those fields. And you can find that in the content editor. If you look at any item, so there's my simple workflow page. If you show those standard fields, these are the hidden fields that exist on all items. That we've got a number of sections here. Statistics shows us, when it was last edited and things like that. Workflow at the very bottom, you can see the field name is workflow. We have state and then lock. And actually, these fields are titles. So it looks like you would actually need to go into, let's see, if I show raw values, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it doesn't show me the actual name of the field. This is the display name, so you'd need to go into the standard template itself. So let's look at any given template, project, learning demos. If I look at this page and go into my inheritance, I can see standard template. If I scroll all the way to the bottom and see workflow, you can see the names of those fields. Again, dunder, default workflow, dunder, lock, dunder, workflow state, dunder, workflow. So knowing the names of those system fields, if you are doing things programmatically, can be useful. But let's see. And oh, another field I forgot to hide. The symposium, so that one is not coming up. Sorry about this. I forgot to update this since my last presentation. So these are some upcoming events, which yeah, these are some things to look for at symposium. There were a number of workflow related presentations. But let's see. So that is the end of my presentation. So thanks so much for listening. And let's see, just a little bit about me. You may know me from my years as a technical trainer at Sitecore. My name is Andrew View, and that last name is pronounced like room with a view. And I've been a longtime technical trainer at Sitecore for over 10 years. Helping developers get certified and marketers use the personalization and testing features. I've worn a number of hats here, from marketer, developer, both on ASP.NET and Next.js. I'm right now working as a solution consultant. So I'm a Sitecore contractor. I'm actually joining the Sitecore community and trying to get MVP. Although my first contract is at Sitecore, which is kind of funny. After being here for 10 years, I came right back on a temporary contract here. But that is through the end of May. So yeah, got a background in all Sitecore products. When I joined in 2015, it was version 8 that was new. I've worked with every product since then, which of course is now all bundled back into SitecoreAI. Have a background with business users, marketers, and developers. Recently co-organized the Minneapolis Sitecore user group here in Minnesota in the States. And if you're looking to contact me, the best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. So if you enjoyed this presentation, please reach out and connect. I'll also just go ahead and post this in the chat. You can also find me on GitHub and my website, andrewview.com. I've actually got a companion blog post here as well. This under construction. If you know me, this is kind of a little inside joke here. I say all websites are under construction, but I built this in Astro just because I was looking to learn something new. But on the blog, I've got a companion post here that's a 3-part post. Part 2 is going to be posted actually this week. And so in part 3, I'm going to share more about the API and those GraphQL mutations. So that is me. So thank you so much. And let's see. Are there any questions? All right.
I don't think we do have any questions.
Excellent. Well, yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. And Shri, I'll let you take it from here.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Andrew, for your wonderful content for workflows. We had our there was testing team, the QA team, and the content entry team and developer team. Everyone joined as part of this particular session, and I hope they would have learned something new, or else if it might have felt repetitive, but still there was something new to learn. So thank you so much for sharing your insights on this. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
as
so
well
much,
for the
Andrew.
opportunity to present. Yeah, it's a topic that it's not super exciting, but it's near and dear to my heart. I really like workflow, and it's one of those that does often get overlooked, especially if you're trying to get a site live quickly.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.